barbell deadlifts, barbell squats, overhead press, lat pull down, chest press. And when you're ready to stop, repeat. That's how we climb Olympia. When you push that extra rep, when you pull another set, when you lift that one last rep, you will climb the mountain and no one will forget. Bring on the build with the NASM Physique and Bodybuilding Coach Program.
You're listening to Random Fit with hosts Wendy Batts and Ken Miller, winner of a Gold Markham Award for Digital Media.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Random Fit. I am Wendy Batts here with my co-host and friend, Mr. Ken Miller. Ken, how are you?
I'm doing well, Wendy. How you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, another day, that's for sure.
Another day, another dollar.
Yeah, maybe something like that. Or we hope anyway, right? Well, this week, guys, we want to say thank you to all of those that have reached out with some questions and comments regarding things that you wanted to know that you've heard on Random Fit. So I just wanted to take the time to say that we really appreciate you listening to us. I don't think we say it enough, but we value your opinion and your thoughts. And so if you have comments or questions, always make sure that you come to Ken and I, because we'd love to provide feedback, or maybe it will be a session that we can do for you guys live on Random Fit. So, but with that being said, I wanted to talk about this week's topic. We're talking about two hearts that beat as one. So when we talk about this, we're really going to focus a lot today on the calf. So Ken, why don't you take us in and talk about how that even happens?
Well, I think that the motivation for this episode was, one of the things that both Wendy and I do often is, well, not that often, but we'll actually get on a plane and we'll travel and we'll present at conferences or do workshops for trainers across the country and internationally. And one of the things that sparked this idea of the calf being a second heart is the fact that when you have a chance to, if you have to sit down especially for a prolonged amount of time, it's easy to get stiff and stagnant with the lower body because you're just sitting there. The hips are flexed, the knees are flexed, and the foot is just kind of just sitting on the ground. But one of the things we don't realize is that the importance of the calf complex is that it acts as a second heart. When we look at systemically and when it comes to blood flow, of course, the first thing we think about when it comes to circulating blood across the body or around the body, through the body, is the heart, right? But that blood has to come back. And when it comes to movement and gravity, just pooling blood in the lower extremities, it's the calf that actually does a lot to help circulate the blood, recirculate the blood, and get it back up to the heart. So when on one of our last longer trips, just sitting on the plane, one of the things I found myself, tapping my feet, moving my foot and ankle. When I don't know how you do it or how you last through the flights, but just getting the foot and ankle to move a little bit and just to help facilitate blood flow has been one of the big things that help support the thought that the calf is indeed a second heart. So Wendy, when it comes to the calf complex and what it does to help, again, push blood back up towards the heart. So if I'm the calf, I'm the foot and ankle, my job as I'm moving, flexing, and extending through the ankle, I'm actually pushing blood back up to the heart. What's one of the things that you do to help facilitate movement and getting the calf more involved as far as circulation goes?
You mean when I'm sitting on a plane or
Yeah.
I could go for hours talking about this, but yeah, I mean, when you think about the calf, it points the foot, it flexes the foot, it makes it go in circles. I mean, you got to think that's why when we talk about even movement compensations during the assessment, why that's so important, because if you're locked down at the foot and ankle, it really can affect everything else up your entire body. And so, I mean, for me, I'm like you, I move around all the time. And the more that I can move my ankle, so point my toe, do the alphabet. I've heard from my physical therapist friends, they do that with people that are coming out of rehab or just had surgery, is they teach them how to do the alphabet with their toes. And, because it's actually getting more movement within the calf and the ankle together, playing nicely, but again, for the same reasons. So therefore we're not pulling blood into that region, and we're actually getting the blood throughout the body like it's supposed to, and you're not fighting that gravity. So lowercase alphabet, and then again for the uppercase alphabet, I mean, that's very, very good for the foot and ankle complex. And I would say that, and just getting up, moving around, calf raises, always really good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have anything special that I?
Well, I think we'll get more into that, but as far as movement goes, and that's a great start as far as getting people to move more. So if you're listening to us here on Random Fit, we're talking about the calf complex being basically a second heart. So two hearts beating as one. So with Wendy Batts and I here, Ken Miller here on Random Fit. So when we talk about circulation, and this is one of the topics, especially with, talking about the cardiorespiratory system and getting heart and lungs to move better, just move more, especially with people having been sedentary for maybe more than usual over the last couple of years. And we talk about heart health and cardiorespiratory health. We have to now, in light of this new approach, or this other alternative approach to looking at the total body as a pump. We have a pump here in our chest, and we have a pump basically down both of our legs. But the importance of that, as I started doing more research as far as the importance of the calf's contribution to circulation, the heart pumps about 5 liters of blood a minute, right? So we're talking about a gallon or so a minute, and then the body has about 1.2 to 1.5 gallons of blood throughout the body. So that's a lot of information. It's a lot of information about how much blood and how much fluid actually we have to circulate, and that's going throughout the body. And then, the other fun fact that I read about was that the heart beats about 100,000 times a day, right? But when it comes to exercise, blood flow can increase 3 to 4 times more during exercise versus being sedentary. So when it comes to the calf's contribution, again, if we're exercising or if we're jogging outside, going for a walk, jumping, things a little bit more ballistic like that, definitely the lower leg has a big contribution towards contributing to those 100,000 plus beats a day. When it comes to exercise, that's 3 to 4 times more. But again, the calf it has to contribute to that, because the heart can't just do all of that on its own. So when it comes to movement, we do have to consider the fact that it is a total body endeavor, right? And then when it comes to the calf's contribution, one of the things that you and I like to geek out on, Wendy, is biomechanics. And when we talk about the importance of having appropriate and adequate mobility of the foot and ankle, that winds up being the first things that we wind up looking at, especially if we're taking on a new client. We take them through a movement assessment. And, the one that comes to mind, as I'm sure it does for you, is a whole overhead squat assessment, where we can take a gander at, okay, how well does that foot and ankle move? Because if we're going to have you pump more blood, if the heart's going to move more with some cardio work, with some resistance training, basically you have to, look at where the rubber meets the road, literally, when it comes to the function of the foot and ankle. What are some of the starting points that you like to emphasize with clients as far as having appropriate ankle and foot mobility?
Well, I think, too, just to, even if we, go back and to think about it as the scientific part, to your point, you want your ankle to be able to move and flex backwards about 20 degrees. And that's called 20 degrees of dorsiflexion. And if you don't have that, then obviously you're going to end up, using other muscles that shouldn't be included in performing certain muscles. And then other muscles are going to have to do things that they weren't intended to do. And, it messes up everything within your body. And so, when we were looking at this second heart, if you will, I wanted to kind of dive deeper. And to your point, 100,000 times a day. That's pushing 2,250 gallons of blood. So that's a lot of blood. And so when you're thinking about the calf in general, and we're talking about this second heart system, that's consistent of the muscles and the veins and the valves that lie within the calf, and all of that stuff works together to push that deoxygenated blood back up to the heart and lungs. And so, if there's something that's faulty, so let's say that, you've got these vein valves, or, they act as trapped doors that open and close each time the muscle contracts. If that isn't working adequately, then you're going to end up having some dysfunction in that area. So when that becomes defective, or those valves become weak, then obviously the second heart then is becoming overwhelmed because things aren't working as seamlessly as they were intended to. And so then the blood can actually pull in your calves. And then, especially women, when they're like, oh my goodness, I've got these spider veins or varicose veins. And, people can end up having a lot of issues because that calf complex isn't working as functionally and ideally as possible. So when you're thinking about just the calf complex in general, there's a lot of things that, can go wrong. And there's a lot of issues like chronic venous insufficiency can happen. So when you get that CVI development, that's a bad thing, and then also too, looking at someone's ankles when they start to swell and they're getting water retention, that's an indication that something isn't working right, and your lymphatic system isn't able to work as efficiently either. So those are two big red flags. When the movement efficiency, like you said, if you're doing a movement assessment and things aren't working properly, that's an issue that can lead to muscles not working, or your muscles not being in balance or balanced correctly. And there's a dysfunction there that we can actually help fix by foam rolling, stretching, and activating the weaker muscles. But there's also other things to consider too, because obviously we need everything to be able to push everything back up towards the lungs so we can, fight gravity and have our heart, because you think you want your heart and your calves to work together. If you've got two quote hearts, you want them both to be working as optimally as possible.
And you brought up some great points there, because if we're talking about blood pooling and when we're talking about swelling and things like that. So if you're a personal trainer listening to us on Random Fit and you're hearing this information on the calf complex working with the heart as far as helping facilitate circulation, and you notice that in your client, that might be an indicator that you might need some professional help. So to stay within our scope of practice as a personal trainer, this is one of those observations that you don't want to let it slide, but pay attention and make the recommendation to your client to go see a medical professional. So if you're an exerciser that isn't under the guidance of a personal trainer, and you notice these things about yourself, as far as the swelling and the possible pooling or whatever the circulatory issue may be, and it's basically a change from what you've noticed before, then it's not a bad idea to go get a checkup and get a physical and just make sure that you're not going to exacerbate or make anything worse within your lower extremity, because we are talking about the importance of the contribution of the calf complex to circulation. But if there is let's say, like as Wendy's talking about, if there is a pump issue, then we got to make sure that you've covered all your bases, and it's not something that's a little deeper than what we're talking about. But Wendy, you mentioned self-myofascial technique or using some kind of foam roller, but what we do need to understand too is that if you do have spider veins or varicose veins, what's the word? Varicose veins, that could be a contraindication to foam rolling, right? So there are situations where, even though the intention of using a foam roller or maybe even a percussion tool to help get the muscles to relax, there are situations where it's not the best thing to implement those tools onto the body, because it can make things worse. Because if you have, as Wendy mentioned, if you have valve issues and you do have those varicose veins or spider veins where applying more pressure may actually be worse, because now you're occluding blood flow when there's already a blood flow situation. So if you notice these things about you and your calf in this context of this podcast, then seek some medical help. Get out there and make sure you understand, okay, what your situation is before you do something, even though your intentions are good and you're trying to get back into better shape.
Yeah, and I think it's important. And myself, Wendy Batts, and Ken Miller are talking about two hearts that beat as one here today on Random Fit, and we're really focusing a lot on the calves. And as we were doing research and learning more about it, I'm like, you know what? I know that it's important because we do assessments and we try to work on regaining better range of motion. But Ken, I think it's important too to realize there are so many things that we can do on a day-to-day basis that's also going to, increase our chances of making sure that the calf is working as optimally as possible. And of course, as I'm reading through it, I'm looking and it's like, what is one of the best things that you can do? And it was something as simple as walking. And so when you think about that, I know myself, I have to take a lot of calls during the day when I'm not actually seeing clients. And, I'm in meetings, and when I don't have to be in front of my computer, I take those meetings and I walk outside. I put my AirPods in, I sit there, I talk. I know my neighbors think I'm crazy because I constantly walk up and down my street. But, when you're looking at that and you're immobile for extended period of time, it doesn't matter. Like when you're sitting in an airplane, obviously you're locked down and you can only do so much to benefit yourself. If, your kids are in a car seat for a long period of time, you need to think about their ability to get out, walk around and stuff. So maybe making a few more pit stops than you thought. But, when you're doing all of this sitting, then that's when you're also, seeing that the blood starts to pool. That's when we start to see the swelling, and it can actually lead to, dangerous blood clots. And so when you hear people talk about deep vein thrombosis, that's a big deal. And, so it's also things like, all right, what can I do about that? Well, number one, get up and walk around, take your meetings, walk around. Like we always say, I don't have time to exercise, but you have time to walk, and you can make time and take meetings. Like I said, take them mobile. And, I thought another thing that was interesting was people are actually now taking like their company meetings outside and walking as they're talking. And I was like, you know what? That's genius. We always talk about getting up and setting an alarm and stretching, for a couple minutes every 30 minutes or so. But why not take a walk?
Yeah. It's funny, Wendy, because as you're talking, how many times have you and I been on the phone and you're like, all right, if you hear anything, I'm walking my dog, and while I take this call, because you and I, between our schedules, it's like that's the only time we have a chance to talk is when we either we're walking the dog while we're talking, or it's like, okay, let's get on the phone, but I have to walk the dog at the same time. So it's
well, one of my favorite things too is, again, my husband, it works from home as well. And so he's constantly on meetings, and I don't want to overtalk him. He doesn't want to overtalk me. So I'm usually the one that takes it mobile, because he's unfortunately stuck in front of he's on a Teams meeting where he's got to be face to face or showing his screen. And my favorite thing that you say, and you say it all the time, is like, where are you? And it's because I have my AirPods in that pick up everything, and he hears the birds chirping, so.
Like, must be nice out there in Atlanta.
Yeah, it's not raining today. The birds are out. So yes.
But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of times that you and I are both on the road. We're both walking, if you will. But you did bring up a good point there, as far as, if you are in a situation where you're on a plane, and you and I, Wendy, we've taken an international flight where we're comparing notes, like, my flight was 15 hours and your flight was 9 hours before you got your layover. And that just, that's where you start to weigh the benefits of, okay, do you take a longer direct flight, or do you take, a layover, somewhere in Europe where you can break up your flight into 2 8-hour trips? And I'm like, now that I'm really thinking about it, like, do I take that layover so I can like go walk from one terminal to the next, or am I that guy, which I am, that walks up and down the aisles? I get up, and if I'm under the bulkhead, I'm the one, since having met Kelly Sturrett, I'm sitting down on the floor, right? I'm changing elevation of my hips, and I'm sitting on the floor. I'm taking off my shoes, and I'm sitting on my heels, just to get that ankle, force that little stretch. I'm not doing no downward facing dog or the world's greatest stretch or anything, but I am, getting the hips and the foot and ankle to move. And that's the only thing that keeps me, keeps me sane. I mean, but I do, and me, Wendy, I bring more toys with me on the plane than anything else to help facilitate, because sitting there, my legs, my calves, they get stiff. So I take things like especially that last trip we took with the Normatec 3, and I take my Volt Go just to keep things going. And not that we're telling all our clients to make that kind of investment, but it is as simple as you're saying, Wendy. Just get up, walk around, move, just get out there, get the ankles to point and flex, and doing those ankle movements. But one of the things that I recommend for my clients too is to get that sit and stand, stand modified desk, so that they're not sitting all day, but they're also not standing up all day, because just keeping that same footprint can be part of the issue. But changing the elevation can help. But for the most part, nothing beats getting around and walking, at the bare minimum.
Yeah. And I think too, we've talked about, we've done, other podcasts on Random Fit where we really talk about, investing in a good pair of shoes and, trying not to wear high heels unless you have to. And the first thing you do when you get out of those is to stretch and move your ankles around. Because unfortunately, when you are standing, and if you, have a job where you have to stand for 8 hours or 9 hours a day on like hard concrete, it does play a toll not only on your foot, but, in your back and other areas too. And so, I think the more that you think about and invest in your body, I mean, I know it's expensive because we do have all the, the vibration tools, and I know what are they, the Normatec Goes now that really do focus on the calf. I find that like a phenomenal product because it is really focusing on the second heart for that reason. It's trying to provide, better circulatory, pumping, if you will, throughout your system. But, you have to take responsibility too. Like you said, get up, sit and stand every 30 minutes or so. People that are like, oh, I invested in this standing desk and I've been, unfortunately all day for 8 hours at a time, and they didn't really move. That's not always the best thing either, because how are you standing? Are you, most people don't stand in proper alignment, feet pointed straight ahead, really good, abs are in tight, glutes are squeezed, and they have proper posture for 8 hours. I mean, let's be real here. People don't do that. And so they start shifting a hip and doing stuff that can lead to other issues. And so, I'm not saying that those aren't really good, but just be smart in the timing. And, just thinking about all that we said, we could go on and on and on, but, the calves and the foot and ankle, that is a very important region of your body to always consider stretching, if you can roll, because there's no contraindications, as you mentioned, which was, a very good catch on my part, because you definitely want to make sure that you're able to do that. But the more that you can keep your lymphatic system going, your blood flow flowing, getting good range of motion to decrease, stress to other joints of the body, all of that is super, super important. And unfortunately, people just do calf raises and then move on. Like,
Right.
Oh, I did my workout for the day. All is well.
And like you're saying, there are two sides to that coin, because you can stretch, right? But we also need to strengthen, because that's what a pump does, right? It's actually physically moving. It's not just allowing blood to come into the area, but as a pump, there is a mechanical contraction. It shortens, and that is the strengthening part that you're talking about. So when it comes to walking, not bad to, stop, hug a tree, or lean on a tree and do some, do 12 to 20 calf raises, nice and slow, and to make sure that we get good ankle mobility for one, but also good contraction of the calf. So there is a lot of things to do. And I think one of the last things that I forgot to mention too is I tell my clients to take off their shoes. Like if you're at a desk, get your feet out of those shoes and just kind of, again, if you're watching this
Good
on
spreaders.
Yeah, actually just move your toes, move your foot, and get those the foot and ankle and the toes to move in all degrees of freedom and motion. And that way, again, I am that guy on the plane that the second I know that if I've got the aisle seat, the people that are sitting next to me, if I have a middle seat and a window seat person, once they sit down, boom, shoes come off, and I'm just moving.
We just want to pray that you took a shower, that you didn't wear your
I put on a new pair of socks.
But I mean, I think it's important to, and one of the key takeaways and why I loved, when you're like, hey, we should do this, is because we're seeing more and more issues happening. And when you're looking at the research and you're thinking about this, there's over 40 million people that are affected with some kind of venous issue. and and they get these things called leaky valves and stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of that stuff could have been we could have helped if they would have really thought about what they were doing, and sitting for extended period of times. And so it's really, really important. This isn't something that just affects a very small minimal amount of people in the population. 40 million people is a lot of people. So it is an issue that unfortunately we're seeing more and more of.
Yeah. And again, and classically in our training, and as far as working with athletes and getting them to run and jump, we've talked about the foot and ankle as from more of a biomechanical standpoint, and getting that 15 to 20 degrees for them to do whatever sport they need. But now that as we're looking at it, there is more of a circulatory benefit, and just for everybody, not just athletes, but anybody that is trying to stay healthy and do the best they can, especially when we're talking about cardiorespiratory health and fitness. The calf complex does play a bigger role than we think. And so all the tools and hopefully some of the ideas that you guys come away with from this episode of Random Fit, hopefully that will help facilitate better circulation overall. So Wendy, hey, as always, I pick up a lot from you as far as how you approach these different topics that we talk about on Random Fit. So thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. You know what? Anytime you guys want to listen to some birds chirp, just call me up on my cell phone. I'm sure I'm probably outside walking.
Yeah, if you're talking to Wendy or an I between meetings, we're walking a dog or something.
Or even in meetings, I have to mute because people are like, where are you? Are you like in the safari somewhere, like birds or all kinds of stuff?
Was that a hippo I heard in the background? All right. So Wendy, hey, great hanging out with you as always. So for those of you listening to us on Random Fit and you like this topic that we're talking about as far as two hearts beating as one, basically talking about the importance of the calf complex in circulation, please let us know. We'd love to hear what you want to hear about, and just give us a shout out. So follow, subscribe, comment, and share. Let us know what you want to hear about, and we'll do the best we can to get that information out to you. So until next time, on behalf of Wendy Batts and I here on Random Fit, take care and be well.